Welcome to the Caregiving Podcast. I'm Inga.
And I'm Julie.
And long story short, we have Caregiving. We are two momtrepreneurs who have built an in-home care business from the ground up, guided every step of the way by God's care and fueled by agape love. Almost 14 years later, we felt called to create this podcast as a resource for families with caregiving needs. Whether you care for a family member or are looking for advice on professional caregiving, we want this to be a platform to support you.
Each week, we will come to you with encouraging stories of families who have found the right balance for their loved ones, tips for how to care for them and you, and much more. We hope you continue to join us each week as we share in this exciting new journey together.
Hello, Sunshines, and hello, Julie. How are you today?
I'm good, Inga. How
Good.
are you?
I'm excellent.
Yeah.
Is there any other way to be?
Oh, that's the best way to be.
Yeah. So, hey, Julie,
Yeah.
why are piggy banks so wise?
Hmm.
Because they're filled with common sense.
There you go. Drum roll.
Julie.
Wow, no more.
What did the ocean say to the beach?
Ocean say to the beach.
Nothing. It just waved.
I was trying to come up with something clever, and that was cleverer.
What fills your heart with joy?
Today was a great day to wake up, and it was just a beautiful fall day, and it was just nice and calm. Yeah. And
so waking up in the morning fills your heart with joy?
No, it was after I complained about it and got going, and then realized how beautiful it was.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Good.
Huh. So things like that.
Yeah.
What about you?
All of the things. Anything with family, anything with friends.
Mm-hmm.
I like to give, I just like to do things for people, and those things bring me joy.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah. And food. I like to prepare food for people.
I like
especially
to eat
if they
food.
tell me that it's good.
Just don't bring me broccoli.
No broccoli for you.
Or beets.
No beets for you also.
I got a list.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I'm sure at some point we'll be talking about how eating healthy is good for you, and vegetables are on that list. But what vegetables do you eat?
Corn.
Okay. Is that it?
Peas.
Okay.
Accidentally, I'll have a bean here and there.
Like a green one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, nope, that's it. Raw carrots, raw tomatoes, but I do like tomato sauce. There's nothing wrong with a good spaghetti
Right.
sauce.
So sauce mixed on the noodles or sauce ladled on top of the noodles?
Either way, I'm a fan.
Just a fan.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Shall we roll into our verse of the day?
Yes,
I'm going to read it, and then you have an explanation for us.
I do.
This is Peter chapter 1, verse 19, and it says, "But with the precious blood of Christ, as of a lamb without blemish and without spot." So talk to me about what the interpretation of that verse.
So basically, I picked it because we're going to be talking about blood pressure today. But actually, when I looked up what 1 Peter 1:19 meant, it continues the thought that was begun in verse 18, where Peter is showing the great value of Christians. God's children carry in the eyes of our Father. It can be measured by the price he was willing to pay. He made a great sacrifice in order to possess us, to call his own people. Peter has already shown that God didn't pay for us in mere human currency like silver or gold. Our worth to him can't be weighed in pounds or dollars. Instead, in verse 19, Peter writes that we were redeemed with something that will still hold value long after this world's economics are forgotten. Our Father purchased us with the blood of Christ. So there you go.
Yeah. Wow. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Nice work.
Pretty deep, huh?
Yes. And what did you bring to us for an uplifting story?
Oh, I just thought this was sweet. There was a lady, she's a nanny, and so she took the kids to the park, and as they got into the car, all of a sudden she felt like something was wrong, and she looked down, and she lost the ring that she had gotten when her father passed that March.
Oh, no.
And so they quickly all got back out there and dug through the sand and couldn't find it. And so anyway, they went home and she was really, really sad. And so the whole family, when the parents got home, they all went back out there and people started looking with them because they're like, what's she looking for? And finally they decided to get onto social media and asked for people that have metal detectors are called detectorists.
Something.
Detectorist.
Detectorist.
So a couple of people came, and the first guy, it was spending an hour because they said the size of the sand pit was like a tennis court. Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
really big.
That is big.
Yeah. So he had been going along, and then one young kid came along and just within a few minutes found it. He said he felt so bad because the other guy had been putting in all this time and he just happened to get to the right spot.
Yep.
And they were able to find it. But anyway, she had gotten just physically ill because of losing what was a treasure to her.
Something of such importance to her.
So anyway, basically she said then all of the grown-ups, everybody in the sand pit was just jumping up and down and yelling and screaming and so happy. Aww. And then actually what she ended up doing was making a donation to a mental health charity that her father had supported because of these people that helped her find her treasure. Oh, that's really good. Pretty cute.
Very cute.
Yeah.
Well, I brought, so I have the book, The Daily Wisdom, and I know I've read from it before on here. It's authored by Julie, I believe it's pronounced Fournier. But anyway, it's one of those that like there's something for every day. I tend to not follow the everyday thing, and instead I like to randomly just open it up and see what happens. And so this is actually what I have for today. And it says, choose bravery over perfection. A ceramics teacher had his class mold clay into pots. He asked half of his class to focus on making the best possible pot, and he asked the other half of the class to make as many pots as possible. They were both given equal amounts of time to work. The group that was focused on producing a high quantity of pots actually had much higher quality pots. The group that was focused on perfecting a single high quality pot had assembled a useless pile of clay. So what it says, why? Well, every time the group who was focused on making a lot of pots finished one, they could identify their mistakes, then quickly correct it in the next one. The group focused on quality had no failures to learn from, and failure, as we know, is a really, really good teacher. So bravery is not about encountering failure, imperfections, and uncertainty, but acting anyways. Understand that perfection is impossible to reach. You can't always be perfect, but you can always be brave and keep trying. Isn't that interesting, though?
Yeah. No, if you apply that to your life, that's what I was trying to put it into context. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So just keep trying, and
boy, I make one hell of a pot.
Heck yeah. Perfectly imperfect.
Yes, that.
Yeah. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about blood pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just wanted to talk to you guys about some facts and different categories and basically what the diastolic versus a systolic blood pressure is. And actually, I love it when we do these because I learn so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we're actually going to summarize it with some very cool success stories of people that had high blood pressure and how they overcame that. And I've recently had a high blood pressure because I just went from a Samsung to an iPhone, and it's hard.
It was interesting. I did think that you might, yes, that was a hard decision to make, but you're handling yourself very well.
Yes,
so.
I've had about approximately 12 hours to adjust, and it's still hard work.
Yeah. It's weird because, I agree. When you go from that over to the iPhone, but now, so I've been on iPhone so long that if you hand me your phone to do something, and then I'm like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just what you're used to in the moment.
For sure. So I'm going through a lot of changes right now.
But you're doing okay. I heard you had to create a new Snapchat account.
Oh, my word. There's a couple of things that, how many passwords can I remember? I think maybe that's where the high blood pressure came from. Dang it, not again. Oh, because you always think you're going to write that stuff down.
Oh, yes.
Forget it.
Yeah.
So anyway,
you just save it so that it just can automatically log you in.
Yes, that's what you
Actually,
do.
Kevin had high blood pressure yesterday as well, because as we were trying to get the phone switched over, he was trying to do something here. Same thing, going into an old account.
Oh.
And then it screwed up everything with all of his passwords. And so anywho, I do write all of mine down. I try to be pretty diligent about that. But not always.
Well, then I forget where I wrote them down.
Well, yeah, that
That's
can
a
happen
bit of
too.
Bit of a trouble.
Well, and you have to be careful with writing them down, because you don't want somebody to then
steal
It's
my
just a very big
Candy
issue.
Crush saga. I lost all of that too.
Oh, that's very sad. Okay, well, what is high blood pressure?
So high blood pressure. Blood pressure is the force of blood against your artery walls as it circulates through your body. Blood pressure normally rises and falls throughout the day, but it can cause serious problems if it stays high for a long time. High blood pressure can lead to heart disease and stroke, the leading causes of death in the United States. Yeah, that's why this is really important to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, and when you talk about risk, they do say that 1 in 3 American adults has high blood pressure, and that's an estimated 67 million people. Also, children can develop high blood pressure.
Oh, boy.
So basically, several factors that are beyond your control can increase your risk for high blood pressure, and those would be your age, your sex, and your race or ethnicity. But you can work to reduce your risk by eating healthy, maintaining healthy weight, not smoking, being physically active.
There's that diet and
Always,
exercise
every time.
thing.
Anyway.
Yeah. So signs and symptoms. High blood pressure usually has no warning signs or symptoms, so many people don't realize they have it. That's why it's important to visit your doctor regularly. Be sure to talk with your doctor about having your blood pressure checked.
Right. And so basically how they diagnose high blood pressure, right, is when the doctor measures your blood or your medical person measures your blood pressure by wrapping that cuff around you with a pressure gauge, and it squeezes up on your arm, so it squeezes the blood vessels. Then they listen to your pulse with a stethoscope, and at the same time while they're releasing air from the cuff. And the gauge measures the pressure in the blood vessels when the heart beats and when it rests, which we'll get into more about that, because the different types.
Yeah.
Systolic and diastolic.
What I find interesting is whenever I have to go to the doctor for anything, which is not very often, but that anticipation of going to the doctor, I always have a higher blood pressure than normal.
Really?
And then after I'm going to leave, I said, could you check my blood pressure again? And once all of that is gone, I'm back to my normal.
Sure.
And that's just weird for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's just what I
just
do.
Get a little stressed, and it just...
Oh, yeah, just like, oh, gosh, what have I done now? Are they going to tell me I have to go on a diet? Oh, dang it.
They're going to tell you have to eat more vegetables, and you have a very limited list of vegetables
out
you're
the
willing
rough.
to eat.
There goes my blood pressure. Okay, how is it treated? So if you have high blood pressure, your doctor may prescribe medication to treat it. Lifestyle changes, such as the ones that we talked about, can be as important as taking medications. Talk with your doctor about the best ways to reduce your risk for high blood pressure.
Okay, so then let's talk about what blood pressure levels are actually healthy.
Right.
So to determine whether your blood pressure is normal, your doctor is going to examine your systolic and diastolic pressures with the gauge, and it measures in millimeters of mercury. So normal on a systolic is going to be less than 120, and on a diastolic is going to be less than 80. At risk, the systolic is somewhere between 120 and 139, diastolic 80 to 89, and then considered high would be anything over 140 on your systolic and 90 on your diastolic.
Okay, so basically there are several steps to maintain normal blood pressure levels. Get your blood pressure checked regularly, eat a healthy diet, maintain a healthy weight, be physically active, limit your alcohol use, do not smoke, and prevent or manage diabetes. So tons of information like this on the internet. Yeah. So what we want to do is talk about those ranges. So there's 5 different blood ranges categories, blood pressure categories.
Okay. So
that normal is the numbers, like we said, 120 over 80, and that's considered a normal range. If you results fall into this category, stick with heart-healthy habits, like following a balanced diet and getting regular exercise. If it's elevated, that's like that 120 to 129 and less than 80. Basically, people with elevated blood pressures are likely to develop high blood pressure unless steps are taken to control the condition. So then hypertension, hyper always means more. So more tension, stage 1, that's at 130 to 139 over 80 to 89. And it's hard to remember all of these numbers.
Right. Well, it's almost, if you can kind of remember, 120 over 80 being, that's, you don't want to be any higher than that. And anything higher than that is probably a situation where you need to be looking into it and speaking with your medical professional on steps to help reduce.
Right.
Yep.
Right. That hypertension stage 2 is when it's 140 over 90. And then the hypertensive crisis is when you want to get immediate medical attention. Usually when you're having that, you can feel that you're just completely off.
Well, we just had a situation at IPAGA where one of our clients, he was 180 over, I don't recall off the top of my head, and basically non-responsive. And so, of course, the instruction is call or dial 911 because he is in a bad way at this time. And so he did end up being transported. And thankfully, by the time he got to the hospital and was seen by the doctor, they got everything under control. And I think they were able to make some medication changes. But that is very scary.
Oh, boy. Yeah, and you need to get on it immediately. You don't want to wait. Yeah, there's potential for strokes and there's all of these just different things that can happen to your body. Another thing to remember is very often your blood pressure can change from when you sitting to stand up. And that's when you get that wibbly wobbly thing going on. And so there are a lot of different things going on that will tell you that your blood pressure is off kilter. You can get hot, you can get dizzy, your breathing. So really be careful.
And we haven't talked much about low blood pressure, which I don't know enough about to even speak on, but I would imagine that can be an issue as well.
Yep. Anything that's not in that 120 over 80 ish, because everybody's a little different.
Right.
What's normal for me is not necessarily going to be the same for you. So
I think I usually am around like 110, 110 over 70 or 80. I don't know. They never seem to be concerned. So
yeah,
like, I guess I don't need to know what this means, but I probably should.
Your blood pressure numbers and what they mean. So systolic is the first number, and that indicates how much pressure your blood is exerting against your artery walls when the heart beats. The diastolic blood pressure is the second number that indicates how much pressure your blood is exerting against your arteries walls while the heart is resting between beats. Which number is more important? Typically, more attention is given to systolic blood pressure, which is the first number, as a major risk factor for cardiovascular disease for people over 50. In most people, systolic blood pressure rises steadily with age due to the increasing stiffness of large arteries, long-term buildup of plaque, and increased incidence of cardiac and vascular disease. However, either an elevated systolic or an elevated diastolic blood pressure reading may be used to make a diagnosis of high blood pressure. So according to recent studies, the risk of death from ischemic heart disease and strokes doubles with every 20 milligrams systolic or 10 mmHgs. Blood pressure is measured in millimeters of mercury because Mercury was used in the first accurate pressure gauges and is still used in medicine today as a standard unit of measurement for pressure. So you can take your pressure everywhere. You can go to the store, and by the pharmacy, they always have a place where you can just stick your arm in that cuff and just sit still and don't move around, don't talk, and just know that thing is going to put a death grip on you.
Right.
And then don't freak out because it will let go.
It will let go.
It has to get up higher than what it's going to be. So then there's silence. And then when I was going to school to become a medical assistant, we had to know how to do a blood pressure. And so we had to practice on each other. And it was one of those things where you didn't realize you were even breathing because you were holding it so you could hear those heartbeats as soon as possible. As the mercury starts dropping is when you start to see the number, and then when you can't hear it anymore, then that was the bottom.
Wow.
So, but yeah, you got to learn that kind of stuff, and it's scary at first, but then it just becomes second nature.
Sure.
I just envision Sammy is a pro now.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have a heart.org from the American Heart Association has a really cool posters on different blood pressure categories, which is normal, elevated, the hypertension stage 1, stage 2, and then hypertensive crisis, what the systolic should be, and the diastolic. Once again, don't freak out about those things because yours might be a little bit different than the classic poster.
Right. It might not be exactly 120/80. Don't freak out, but just, be in the ranges.
Yeah. And if you're concerned, just make an appointment and get in there and get checked. Yeah.
Did you know that systolic is actually a Greek word?
I did not.
And it means a drawing together or a contraction. So basically on the systolic, it's the first beat that's heard during the blood pressure taking, and it measures the maximum pressure within the blood vessels when the heart contracts. And then on the diastolic, also a Greek word, and it means drawing apart. So it's the last beat that's heard during the blood pressure taking, and it measures the minimum pressure within the blood vessels when the heart is relaxed.
So basically, the heart has those chambers, and so the systolic, they say that it sounds like lub,
right?
And then diastolic, because it's the first beat heard, lub, and then the diastolic is the last beat heard, and it's a dub, lub dub. Lub dub. Do I sound like a heart?
You do.
Lub dub. Lub dub. Lub
wow.
Dub. Yeah. So anyway, that's ventricle contracting, and then the ventricle filling up with blood when it does that.
Huh.
So
what I want to know is who figures this stuff out?
Right. Somebody that's got that interest, and it really, really confused them, and they wanted to get to the bottom of it.
I mean, I'm glad that they did. I just am always boggled about things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, modern medicine is just insane to me.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So basically, the 4 chambers, right and left atrium, right and left ventricles. There's 2 valves preventing blood from flowing in between the chambers. During the systolic phase, the ventricle and valves are closed and blood flows to the atrium. Once the atrium is filled with the blood flows to the valve, which is open, and the ventricles release. Blood will then flow from the atrium to the ventricle. The flowing and the filling of the ventricles is known as the diastolic. So it's just this rhythm that your heart's supposed to do. Now, do you remember when we talked with Turner about when he was having heart problems? The heart is not a heart.
Right.
Like you typically see your heart, your Valentine.
Right.
It's actually skiwampas.
Right.
But his, even in an active person, had become an oval.
That's right.
And so it could not do its thing because it needs to be
asymmetrical.
Thank you. Big words.
Yes.
So anyway.
Can you do that again? Yeah. What I would like to know, and this is off topic, but where did the heart, like a heart, where did that come from? Because it doesn't look anything like a human heart.
Yeah, no, they're kind of weird looking.
Yeah, the human ones?
Yeah.
They are interesting.
Yeah. Pretty kind of weird, ugly, kind of. But they're pretty important, so.
Pretty important.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah.
So you brought some success stories, didn't you?
Yes. We don't always want to be doom and gloom. But basically when you feel like something is up, what are you going to do? You're going to go and get checked.
Sure.
Yep.
And I would imagine that they probably, like if you're just doing like physicals, annual physicals or well checks, which Sammy keeps telling me, she's like, you and Dad need to go just get completely checked out. Head to toe, make sure there's nothing wrong with you. And I'm like, what are you trying to say? Is there something wrong with me? No, I think she's probably very right. But, but they probably, and every time you go to the doctor, they take your blood pressure, right?
Yes.
Every time.
Yeah.
Blood pressure, temperature. What
vitals.
else?
They say the vitals.
Vitals, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, tell us some good news.
Oh, let's see. There's some really little stories here. Ned is an electrical engineer and computer consultant from Oregon. He's always been health conscious. He takes vitamin, exercise, eats a low-fat diet, and is a long-time subscriber of my health newsletter, The Health and Healing. Yet one problem plagued him for almost 30 years. When he was 40 years old, Ned was diagnosed with hypertension and started on a blood pressure-lowering drug. This was to be the first of a long string of prescriptions that not only failed to bring his blood pressure down, but also had many adverse effects. When the side effects of one drug became intolerable, they would switch him to another. He figures he tried about every single antihypertensive drug on the market. Frustrated and fed up with feeling lousy because of the drug, yet scared to just stop them, he went to this wellness institute and found that he was actually insulin. My new phone, I thought I had turned it down. This is that thing where I... Sorry.
I just keep looking around. I'm like, who's ringing?
I don't know. Not me.
Most of the time. Oh, well, like when I was on the phone with Alyssa and I hear ringing and I was like, oh, do you need to go? Do you need to answer that? And she's like, no, you're trying to FaceTime me. So I had put the phone up to my face and clearly my big cheek bumped the FaceTime.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. And of course, always you look like a buffoon with technology when you're...
Did I just look like a buffoon?
Oh no, I was meaning me.
I don't know how to turn my volume off on this new phone.
You said you had like 4 options on your old phone and
Yeah,
only
now
one
I've
on
only
this
got one and that's
clearly
just
it's
not enough.
eluding you, huh?
Yeah, so
Back to Ned.
Yeah, so Ned actually went through a very comprehensive program of his diet and exercise, and once he got on, and they slowly weaned him off his drugs, so don't just quit your drugs.
Sure.
Much to Ned's delight, his blood pressure was even lower than it had been while he was on taking drugs, and so he had to just go and get a reevaluation.
Oh wow, yeah.
Because
what did they say, that his insulin resistance was an underlying factor?
Yeah. He still takes his blood pressure 2 to 3 times a week, and for the past 2.5 years, it's been an average to 125/75 without medications.
Wow. I think that's a really important point, because I think when things happen, when you have high blood pressure, there's going to be a standard protocol, right? The doctor's going to say, okay, we're going to prescribe this. But if you're going through that and not getting results, then keep advocating for yourself and trying to figure out, is there some other underlying issue that's causing it, if the medications aren't working, and especially if you've tried multiples and not had any relief from it. But I think as we, just in general, we need to be better advocates for ourselves and our health.
Absolutely. I think every single one of our podcasts, we talk about that. You can't ever not ask the questions.
Right.
Because you have to understand what is going on with you.
Right.
Yeah. Then there was the people that were on prescription meds, and they were taking multiple drugs to keep their blood pressure under control. They weaned them off their drugs and just started them on a blood pressure lowering regime. And nowadays they're off all of their drugs and they're within the normal range. They continue to eat heart healthy diet, walk 2.5 miles a day, take their supplements, and they've never felt better.
Right. It does, as I'm kind of glancing through a lot of these, it really does seem like there's underlying issues for all of, not all of, I mean, there are underlying issues. And so if you can get to the root of what that is and try to manage that versus just only taking medication, overall you can have a better impact.
Oh gosh. And here we are. We had talked about sleep apnea at one point, and there was one gentleman that had extremely high blood pressure along with heart failure and other cardiovascular problems. They discovered that he had severe sleep apnea, so he borrowed a CPAP machine. And the very first night he slept more soundly than he had in 20 years.
Wow.
And so after 3 weeks of treatment with the CPAP and other therapies, his energy rebounded, his exercise tolerance improved, and his blood pressure fell into normal range.
Right. So basically and we say this all the time, there's always hope. But there are things that you can do to make a huge difference.
Yep. There was, diabetes is a big deal. You've got to really make sure that all of the meds you're taking are going to jive with the hypertensive drugs that you're taking. So that is one of those that you've just got to work with your doctors on.
Well, and I think honesty is key in those situations, and always making sure that you're medical professionals know everything. You know, if maybe you're seeing one guy for your heart, but you have other things going on, the heart guy needs to know about the other things, and the other people need to know about the heart guy. And I mean, the more information that is made available, the better the results are going to be.
Yeah. And actually, the way you're saying that, that's funny. It goes into our next story with Dennis. Dennis, who was a guy that just never went to the doctor. He always shied away from physicians, even though he didn't go to the doctor very often. He was pretty darn healthy. About 3 years ago, he started going to a doctor for a persistent rash. He left with a prescription for a blood pressure lowering drug, which physician had prescribed based on readings taken during that one visit. The medication had so many side effects that Dennis stopped taking it after a week. After that, he didn't worry too much about his blood pressure until he began to experience a throbbing sensation in his head and ringing in his ears. And he was sleeping so terribly that his energy level just hit rock bottom. So basically, at that time, his blood pressure was a very high 175 over 112. His blood test revealed elevated levels of lipids. All of his labs were skiwampus, basically. So basically, he was a poster boy for metabolic syndrome, a cluster of risk factors that dramatically increased type 2 diabetes, heart attack, and stroke. So basically, they were able to work through all of those underlying issues to get him back to where he needed to be. But he had probably been ignoring his body's signals for so long.
Oh, yeah.
And they actually say that's why men don't live as long as women, because women are really in tune to themselves and are much more willing to go in and get checked if something's going on.
I used to not want to go to the doctor or if things were bothering me, I'll just wait a couple days. Let me wait a couple days. I'm not that way anymore. If I start to feel crummy, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go be seen by the doctor and see if I can start to feel better, because it's just miserable.
Get on it.
Yeah. I think back in our lives, some of the worst, times Kevin and I had strep throat, and we just babied it along for a week, and there's nothing you can do until you get some antibiotics. And so we finally decided to go to the doctor, and then you start to feel better in 24 hours. And you're like, why the heck did I wait so long? So I'm not a hero about that stuff anymore. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go be seen and try to feel better.
Yeah. Yep. Dennis was lucky. He had a wife that was very, very health conscious on her cooking. He actually, on top of everything, lost 15 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So that helped him as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think when you feel better, it's easier to just do more things because you feel better. When you don't feel good all the time. I mean, I know me personally, and actually this is not like a health thing. It's more a changing of the weather, or I mean, not changing of the weather, but basically the seasons.
Yep.
Now that it's getting dark earlier, I get home, we do chores, eat dinner, and I'm like, is it time for bed yet? I mean, it's dark. It's 7:30.
I don't like that at all.
And isn't it crazy when during the summertime when it's light until 11, whatever, we just go, and you never think about being up that late. But as soon as it starts to get dark sooner, I just want to go climb into my warm bed with the electric blanket and snuggle in.
And just call her a day.
Call it a day, man.
Oh, Lordy. Well, that was just a quick, brief summary of basically blood pressure facts and some of the verbiage and the words and what they mean and all of that. There's a lot to know. And once again, if you're just feeling funky, just get in there and get checked. And the first thing they do is they check your blood pressure.
Yep.
And it could be something that they can. My husband has been on meds for blood pressure for a long time, but he is medically controlled and doesn't have a bit of trouble with it.
Yep.
But they are very good about getting him in yearly, just to continue to check his labs and to make sure everything's good. And he's just, for whatever reason, was just put on that right dose that worked for him.
Yeah.
And so whenever we fill out insurance forms or any of that, they always, do you have any blood pressure issues or this or that, because they're thinking down the line of stroke and heart attack and all of those things. Well, I always have to say, yes, he's on medication because they're going to find out. But I always put medically controlled.
Right.
I don't know if that helps at all, but it makes me feel better being able to put that because, those are a lot of the risk factors that they're looking for that they don't want to put you into their insurance group.
Yeah, we can't insure you.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and like you had mentioned earlier, if it's a situation where maybe you're not, things aren't feeling right for you or whatever, and you can't get right into the doctor, go to a pharmacy because they have those blood pressure machines or
and Mike
there.
has one at home. And he is actually, it's really interesting. I remember a couple different times when he was off and he just said something about, I felt like my heart was pounding, and he went and took his own blood pressure and it was elevated. So, we just, okay, how are you going to bring yourself down? How are you going to do all this?
Right.
So they do sell them at all of the pharmacies. You can buy your own blood pressure cuff and check it, but don't check it always.
Yeah.
And I think even if you do it after once or twice, switch arms because you're going to not get the same. But don't freak out. Just, remember you follow the directions because there is a certain way to put it on there and all of that. But they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
They'll just take care of you right in your own home.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So I guess that kind of wraps it up. But what did you bring for a grandma saying?
Oh, gosh. Gerald said his grandma said, you'll catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. She said, kindness works. And I just think we have to remember that there's not always enough kindness in this world.
Yes. Well, and I can attest to that because dealing with insurance companies that we talk to almost daily when we're not getting paid what we're supposed to.
Oh,
and
man.
they seem a lot more willing to work with you if you're nice to them than they do if you're not nice.
Yes.
I'll be honest, I've tried both approaches.
Yeah. No,
I mean, the not nice one out of frustration, but that
Lord.
is not an excuse.
That's why we make good partners because in this business, I don't like your job.
Yes.
I wouldn't be able to handle those calls like you do it.
Oh, man.
My blood pressure would be out the roof.
Yeah, it sometimes.
Oh, Lordy.
I really should actually get one of those cuffs here and take my blood pressure after I get off the phone with an insurance claims agent. That would be interesting to see.
Oh.
It's just maddening.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Anyway.
Situational blood pressure.
Situational, yes.
I've just said that. Sounds right.
Well,
Sounds good.
Seems right. It checks out. Cool. Well, listeners, if you haven't yet done so, please go and subscribe. You can do that on Spotify, Google Podcasts, on Apple Podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube and join our Apaga Care and Share Facebook group. And if you have verses that you would like to share or good news stories or grandma sayings, anything that you'd like to share with us, please do so. And you can email those to thecaregivenpodcast@gmail.com.
Oh, we hope you do it. We just love it when we get people sending in stuff.
Yes.
It's too much fun.
Too much fun. All right. Peace out, Girl Scouts.
Have a good day.